però crec que ens podrem treure la mascareta quan parlem. Honorable consellera de Recerca i Universitat, senyora Gemma Geis, senyora Marta Soler, presidenta de l'European Sociological Association, senyora Teresa Sordé, presidenta del comitè organitzador del Congrés ESA 2021, senyores i senyors, tant els presents com els que ens estan veient a distància, em plau donar-los benvinguda a l'Institut d'Estudis Catalans. Em plau especialment que aquest Congrés Internacional de Sociologia es faci aquí. Salvador Giner, que em va precedir com a president de l'Institut i a qui enyorem com a sociòleg i com a persona, de ben segur que estaria avui feliç si pogués estar entre nosaltres. Giner fou un dels fundadors de l'Associació Catalana de Sociologia, que ha coorganitzat aquest congrés, i una sòcia de l'ACS presideix l'European Sociological Association. Són indicadors clars del bon estat de salut de l'Associació Catalana de Sociologia, una de les societats filials més actives de l'IEC. Els desitjo uns bons resultats d'aquest congrés internacional. Chance has made this welcome speech of mine as president of the Institute for Catalan Studies the last one I will make in that capacity. Tomorrow, the mandate of a new presidential team begins. This is, as it seems to me, a good subject for the study by sociologists. What things will change and what will not change when there is a transfer of power between the presidential team that has carried out a certain policy and anyone that, in all probability, will do another one. And this not only in academic institutions such as the Institute, where the change are likely to be minimal, but also in the governments of nations, regions, and municipalities, where if the political color of the leaders change, that will be transferred with complete security to new ways of governing. However, I am not a sociologist, and I have hardly been able to learn something of your science from President Salvador Giner, who preceded me and whom you know as a founding father of modern sociology. But I am an ecologist, and when in this capacity I study the ecology of human societies, some sociology sticks to me. In any case, I want the results of this conference to be beneficial for your trade. I have seen the program and I find it very interesting. As a scientist and as a citizen of a country whose democracy is still very tender, so to speak, I would like to know what Dr. Alondra Nelson will tell us about science, technology, and the 21st century democracy. I wish you a fruitful conference and that the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic be mild on you. Cordially. I ara donaré la paraula a la doctora Teresa Sordé, que és presidenta del comitè d'organització local. Endavant.
Bona tarda. Good afternoon to everyone. Honorable senyora Gemma Geis, consellera de Recerca i Universitats, senyor Joan Domènec, president de l'Institut d'Estudis Catalans, doctora Marta Soler, presidenta de l'Associació Europea de Sociologia, colleagues, welcome to the European Sociological Association Conference. With great enthusiasm since August 2019, when we left the city of Manchester, that the local organizing committee has been dedicated to dream about what is today a reality. At that point, none of us thought that the pandemic would touch the humanity in its heart. During all this period, science has shown to be at the service of society, producing new vaccines in a record time, not being an exception, but part of it, sociology and ISA members have also contributed to ameliorate all the rapid changes and effects that we all have experienced. Amidst this context, the LOC has worked intensively to be ready for possible scenarios in close collaboration with the highly efficient conference committee, all the research networks who have been always supportive and constructive all throughout, all the ESA office, and our wonderful conference assistants, who have been crucial for the smooth development of the organization. All the work behind these days would not have been possible without the valuable contribution of all the LOC members, who represent 8 different universities: the University of Barcelona, the Autonomous University of Barcelona, Pompeu Fabra University, University of Girona, University Rovira i Virgili, University of Lleida, ESADE and Blanquerna from Universitat Ramon Llull, and Open University of Catalonia. Also, the Professional Association, Colpis, and the Catalan Sociological Association. ESA has opened up an opportunity for all of us to collaborate around a joint project that surely it could not end here. From the very beginning, all LOC members were very committed to make this conference an unforgettable one. Going online has not been a barrier to enjoy what Barcelona offers us, but as a great opportunity to discover it from different lenses. We have always envisioned a highly participatory conference. So in the preparation phase, we organized the first ESA hackathon and the call for sociologists to offer their expertise to public institutions, embracing public sociology. And now for these days, film forums, thematic social hubs, and even the first only sociologist online disco have been carefully organized. I would like to especially acknowledge the Universitat Pompeu Fabra, Escola Massana, Escola Lissaba, and the Autonomous University of Barcelona, which from the very beginning altruistically supported the organization of the ESA conference in Barcelona, as all of them were committed to host our activities in their venues. Special mention needs to be made to the involvement and dedication of the Institute of Catalan Studies for their invaluable dedication since last Saturday until the very last moment of this conference. During these months, about 150 volunteers have joined us in this adventure from all over Europe and the rest of the world, like Brazil, Peru, Mexico, to mention some. They have attended the training sessions and enthusiastically get to know each other in our Discord platform. And I want to thank all the volunteers to their commitment, and I hope this experience fits their interest and passion for sociology. My last word is dedicated to all the delegates. We hope throughout this journey we have all ahead to encounter vibrant ideas and reflections, as well as a great opportunity to reconnect with old friends, meet new colleagues, and launch ventures together within and beyond ESA.
Gràcies. Té la paraula la senyora Marta Soler, que és presidenta de l'European Sociological Association. Endavant.
Thank you, President. Honorable senyora Gemma Geis, consellera of Research and Universities of the Catalan Government, Dr. Joan Domènec, President of the Institute of Catalan Studies, also Dr. Federico Zaragoza, Chairman of the Foundation of Culture and Peace, Dr. Alondra Nelson, Deputy Director of Science and Society in the White House Office for Science and Technology Policy, Dr. Teresa Sordé, Chair of the Local Organizing Committee, and dear colleagues, sociologists, delegates from all over Europe and the world. It is such a great pleasure for me welcoming you to this 15th ESA conference. It is amazing that we reach this moment now. The global pandemic has not stopped the ESA in organizing not only the first online conference in our history, but the biggest conference ever. With more than 3,800 delegates registered, representing 74 countries from all over the world, especially Europe and also all over the world. A total of 924 sessions and 3,600 papers presented that will be presented during the following days, with outstanding speakers from different backgrounds, different locations, expertise, promising to immerse all of us in 4 days of intense activity and debate. During this process, the membership of ESA also has grown, and we have reached the greatest numbers of members of the association ever in our history. Today, we are 360 members. 3,060 members. Although we did not know the future, sociologists had knowledges, and it's the topic also of our conference, had knowledges needed by society in order to face any futures. The vaccines have demonstrated to what extent science was prepared to elaborate solutions to viruses that were unknown to us 2 years ago. Sociology is also providing citizens and policymakers with knowledges required to overcome the current social challenges, including those that were created during this pandemic. In the beginning, some countries excluded elder people from receiving treatments. Soon, European sociologists reacted, explaining how this was an ageist discrimination, and this was a discrimination against moral values of democracy, explaining how this was even against, it was happening also in countries and our own legislations. The promotion and dissemination of declarations regarding this issue obtained soon the official change of governments and the decrease of this discrimination also in practice. Many other actions like this one, that is just an example, have been developed by sociologists in different contexts, providing both scientific knowledges accumulated in our discipline through so many years, but also providing new knowledge developed during the pandemic. Of course, we can do more. We will do more. Sociology is more needed than ever, now than ever. And we will continue clarifying this to citizens and to policymakers in Europe. The situation of the world today is very complex and even dangerous, not only for people living in poor countries, but for the whole humanity, not only for the future generations, but also for our children and grandchildren. Europe is not playing the role that should play or could play in these circumstances. All the sciences are needed, and this is one of the key elements to make a better Europe, sciences. And citizens are, and sociology is one of these key sciences. And citizens are every time more conscious and more aware that this is a reality, that sociology is one of these key sciences. In fact, all studies and barometers which show what Europeans are mostly worried about, in the conclusions, they make a list of issues that all of them have a sociological perspective. All of them are dealt by sociology. Horizon Europe is a scientific research program in the world that dedicates more resources to social sciences. Besides, research for all sciences in this program is now oriented towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals, most of them with clear sociological dimension. Let's think about them. Which are the SDGs: reducing poverty, hunger and inequalities, quality education, gender equality, decent work, sustainable cities, climate action, peace. All these 17 SDGs have relevant societal implications. Actually, sociologists have played a key role in the elaboration of the criteria for evaluation in Horizon Europe. Mainly, they have introduced the requirement for all sciences to demonstrate their social impact beyond a utilitarian reductionistic conception of impact. And also the requirement of co-creation in the research process. Sociology is needed by all sciences to meet both requirements. We have now a widely open space to contribute with our knowledges to colleagues from other sciences. I would like now to take this opportunity to acknowledge the first professor in sociology in the world, the first full professor of sociology in the world, as far as we know. The Spanish Manuel Salas y Ferrer was appointed with this position, full professor of sociology, in 1899, before Durkheim. Not enough attention has been paid to Salas y Ferrer's contributions, neither internationally nor in his own home here. But let's think, in diverse countries worldwide, there are also men and women sociologists that are making great contributions to the creation and development of sociology and who have been invisibilized. Acknowledging all of them will contribute to recovering the historical memory of sociology. The 15th ESA conference will become a wonderful space to share research, methodologies, theoretical frameworks, and social impacts, and therefore enabling debates among all colleagues about the role of sociology in so many urgent societal matters. For us, it has been a true challenge to organize this conference in the current circumstances. I would like to, because of this, it was so difficult to make some special thank yous with gratitude. I would like to especially thank all members of the executive committee for the extraordinary work that they are always doing, always in perfect collaboration. My special thanks also to Ligia Ferro, the chair of the conference committee that has worked always in liaison with the local organizing committee. Also my thanks to Teresa, Sordé, and all the whole local organizing committee for the enormous work and dedication they have put to this adventure. Furthermore, this conference would have never been possible without the essential support of the ESA office with Esmeralda Yogun and Elizabeth Torres, securing the backstage that guaranteed the success of the event. They will be in the backstage while you are having all these wonderful sessions that you'll be having these days. Finally, I want to also thank very especially the Institute of Catalan Studies, Institut d'Estudis Catalans, for granting us a space and technological support for this online event. Also to the Catalan universities, which have granted their spaces to ESA, even though in the end we couldn't use them. I hope this 15th ESA conference will be an exciting and intellectually challenging experience for all of you, and that together we will contribute to make sociology more present, vivid, and stronger in the current future of European landscape. I wish you have a wonderful conference. Thank you.
La senyora Gemma Geis, honorable consellera de Recerca i Universitats de la Generalitat de Catalunya. Endavant.
Good afternoon, president de l'Institut Català d'Estudis Catalans, Joan Domènec, també a la futura presidenta, la Teresa Cabré, també a la presidenta de l'European Sociological Association, la doctora Marta Soler, a l'estimada també Teresa Sordé, la Chair of Local Organizing Committee of CESA. Distinguished speakers, Dr. Alondra Nelson, Federico Mayor Zaragoza, researchers and participants in this conference and executive committee. It's my pleasure to address a brief speech for the outstanding community of experts on sociological research in areas that analyze how the challenges that we face create threats and inequalities on how to combat them, in this case for alternative post-COVID futures. The COVID-19 crisis has shown us the fragility on our will-safe state, but also a change in the political and global answer from public sector with the emphasis in the social protection and help to all affected sectors. A public answer that outlines a post-COVID future more social, more sustainable, more inclusive, more humanistic, and more knowledge-based. Priorities that the current Catalan government has integrated with the new Catalan ministers: climate action, social rights, equality and feminism, and research and universities. Sociology is a such important area of knowledge in this moment, in which work is seeing the huge challenges and theoretical and the social problems emerging, and cannot proceed without referring to those of big issues of unfortunate narrative these days. Global warming. Early in August, the Science of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change warned that the human activity is changing the climate in unprecedented and sometimes irreversible ways. Second, totalitarianisms, like in the case of Taliban, regimes that control the lifestyle of their populations, their education, and their culture. Those regimes seek the opposite to knowledge. Pandemics. The COVID-19 crisis has shaken of layers of society on a global scale. The pandemic has led us losses, lives, jobs, economic structures, and welfare state in general. Those seem to be among the greatest challenges we're facing as a society. These challenges generate inequalities, migrations, and poverty. These challenges are related and their origin and their solutions. Science in general, sociology in particular, provides reflections, answers, and solutions. In January 2020, before the COVID outbreak, a chief executive of the British Academy said, "We cannot improve global health if we have only a narrow medical view. Epidemics are social as well as biological phenomena. To tackle our global challenge, we need technology inventions, also insights from psychology or sociology. Scientific and technological innovations are necessary, but for them, we have an impact. It is important to understand how people adapt and change their behavior." I would like to refer to 3 ways of which our system in Catalonia is contributing to purpose. First, our university, research organizations and infrastructures, our talent in general reacted at an amazing pace to fight the COVID crisis from the very first days of pandemic. Quite immediately, they were involved in programs and projects to fight the impact of the COVID-19, new therapies, vaccines, clinical trials. A recent example is the positive results of the vaccine and the Catalan company E-Price developing. But there are hundreds of examples of our system collective efforts. Second, our research tackles that society's challenges in the general and the climate aspects in particular, through projects funded by the European Commission. In Catalonia, for example, the last framework program, Horizon 2020, Catalonia attracted more than 1.5 million participating in the more than 3,000 projects. The third reference to our system providing solutions. The government of Catalonia and the Catalan universities prepare a strategy to react to humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan through a program to become refugees university and to be able to recruit refugees from Afghanistan to guarantee their education. In such situations, a rise of talents of that suffers with not only the country affected, but humanity as a whole invariable. Finally, I'll refer to ESDGs. They are still there, despite the COVID, the totalitarianisms, the global warming, immediate threats. To achieve these goals, we need to continue putting focus on education, gender inequality, health, well-being and demography, energy decarbonization and sustainable industry, sustainable food, land, water and oceans, sustainable cities and communities, and digital revolution and sustainable development. Those that seek transformations identified to achieve ESDGs. The government Catalonia research university system are working on this direction to be a part of the solution for the future for our society. I hope that we can nurture from your faithful discussions and improve your actions, our strategies, and contribute to face the future with more sound tools and more resilient societies. To finish, I want to congratulate Institut d'Estudis Catalans and the organizations for the quality and interest in this international conference. Thank you very much.
Moltes gràcies, consellera. Em penso que ara hem de passar tots a la primera fila per sentir la primera de les intervencions. Tots no. Em penso que algú es queda aquí. Sí. Gràcies.
Open this conference, and now we'll make a connection to a brief break before we start a brief musical break before we start with the plenary speakers. and there, I just hear an echo, sorry. Yes, and here we are with the first plenary session with keynote speakers of this ESA conference, this plenary session with the global title of Envisioning Alternative Futures, with two outstanding keynote speakers. Let me introduce you to our first speaker, who will talk about science, technology, and the 21st century democracy. We have the pleasure to have with us Dr. Alondra Nelson. She serves as the inaugural Deputy Director for Science and Society in the White House Office for Science and Technology Policy. In this role, she brings social sciences expertise, including attention to issues of social inequality, explicitly into the work of federal science and technology strategy and policy. Dr. Nelson is also the Harold Linder Chair and Professor in the Institute for Advanced Study, an independent research center in Princeton, New Jersey. She was president of the Social Sciences Research Council, an international research nonprofit from 2017 to 2021. She was previously professor of sociology at Columbia University, where she also served as the inaugural dean of social science. Alondra Nelson's research contributions are situated at the intersection of political and social citizenship on the one hand, and emerging science and technology on the other. She connects these dimensions in a range of widely acclaimed publications, including most recently, The Social Life of DNA. She's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Academy of Political and Social Science, the American Philosophical Society, and the National Academy of Medicine. Please join me welcoming Alondra Nelson.
Thank you very much, President Marta Soler, for that very kind introduction. And thank you for your steadfast leadership of ESA, this organization, through 2 years of extraordinary changes and unprecedented challenges. Our sociology community in Europe and North America and beyond owes you a debt of gratitude for this leadership. I'm honored to be here with you today among so many colleagues and friends and to speak alongside Dr. Federico Mayor Zaragoza. I'm grateful to the ESA Executive Committee for inviting me to speak as a representative of President Joe Biden and the government of the United States, in addition to my capacity as a sociologist. Before I begin my prepared remarks, I want to acknowledge what has been on the mind of many of us in the past several weeks in particular, and that is the end of the United States' 20-year military presence in Afghanistan. The work of diplomacy and humanitarian assistance will be ongoing, and President Biden will speak on these matters later today. Like all of you, I have spent my life in the academy, and my case studying the intersection of science, technology, and our social fabric, and investigating how science shapes the world we inhabit and how societal context gives shape to science and technology. And studying through the prism of the sociological imagination, the relationship between reason and freedom, as C. Wright Mills put it 6 decades ago. That work, those experiences, have forged the perspective that I bring to public service, the conviction that science and technology must be a tool to make lives better, safer, fairer, and more just. That innovation can open the door to a better future for all people. These past 7 months, as I've learned in the halls of government, as I've served in the halls of government, I've witnessed these ideas come to life. I've seen that democracy, like science and research, is a process, never quite realized, never quite finished, but always striving to perfect itself, pulling us even closer to our highest ideals. And they have never existed in such profound tension. Never before in living memory have the connections between our scientific world and our social world been quite so stark as they are now. We see in the unprecedented access, we see this in the unprecedented access we have to data. Data that tells our stories in bright and vivid colors, data that can be marshaled to make life easier and more just. But too often that information is being abused to evict people from their homes, to threaten their employment opportunities, to track their movements. We have powerful technologies from artificial intelligence to genomics, tools that can help us answer important questions about who we are and where we come from, tools that are right at our fingertips. But too often, these algorithms are plagued by bias, unchecked and unregulated, and programmed to exclude. Too often, they are developed without regard to their real-world consequences and without the input of people who will have to live with their results. We have the tools to cure disease, to prevent human suffering, but too often, these tools are out of reach. A trip to the hospital may mean facing discrimination, an insurance plan that doesn't cover one's treatment, or a doctor who simply ignores one's pain. These injustices are unfolding in your countries and in mine. They are happening in the lives of the most vulnerable among us. And each one falls squarely to us as social researchers, as policymakers to solve. You see, when we have the ability to alleviate suffering but don't, that's not a failure of science, it's a failure of imagination. When we break the bonds of oppression, when we can break the bonds of oppression but choose not to, that's not a failure of engineering, it's a failure of conscience. That is the beauty and burden of this moment. And what we do now, how we resolve these tensions, is a referendum on us, a question of who we are and who we want to be. That is the core of our science and technology vision in the Biden and Harris administration. We are building a science policy that sees solutions through the eyes of the vulnerable and sees innovation through the lens of those who've been most damaged by it. We are fighting to get technological development right, to bring that development out of the shadows and into public view, and to situate it in our democratic values: equity, accountability, justice, and integrity. This is the roadmap to restoring trust in the institutions of government and in science and in one another. We are not the first administration to confront this challenge. 77 years ago, in another period of turbulence and upheaval, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt sent a letter to his science advisor asking how the United States could accelerate scientific research in the years that came after World War II. The answers that came from that letter made way for some of the most important discoveries of the 20th century. President Biden has been very clear. He's said, we can do that again, and we can do more. And we are already on our way. Within hours of taking office in January, President Biden signed an executive order directing every branch of government to root out racism in federal programs and institutions, and within days, another executive order to restore trust in government. He established the Equitable Data Working Group, which I co-chair, to make sure federal data reflects the diversity of America, and launched the Scientific Integrity Task Force to safeguard against political interference and embrace evidence-based policymaking. And in the tradition of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Biden sent his own letter to his White House science advisor, Dr. Eric Lander, laying out 5 guiding questions of and for this moment. Our work in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and indeed as social scientists, is to endeavor to answer those questions, to answer what lessons we can learn from the pandemic and how science can help us avert climate disaster. How can we stay on the leading edge of technological development, remain competitive on the global stage while propelling new industries and new jobs? and to respond to the question that so many of us has wrestled with in our research. How can we guarantee that the fruits of science and technology are fully shared among all people? This question is the foundation of OSTP's new Science and Society division, which I have the privilege to lead. And answering it begins with honest and open conversations about the past and the present, telling stories that for too long have lingered beneath the surface. Many in the US grew up hearing those stories of forced sterilizations and the horrific Tuskegee syphilis experiments, of Black and brown bodies degraded and disrespected, made sick, and sometimes even killed by the very people charged with their care. So it's no surprise that some folks have misgivings with regards to science and technology policy. And it's understandable that over the generations, those misgivings have calcified into distrust. The civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer put it best in 1964. Many are simply sick and tired of being sick and tired. But we aren't just reckoning with the distant past. In recent years, the bonds of trust in government and in science have worn thinner and thinner, a decay that accelerated during the last administration here in the United States. We need to confront that history too. So over the last 6 months, the White House has been engaged with federal scientists, career professionals who staff our government agencies from one presidential administration to the next, to better understand what happened over the last 4 years. We've never seen this level of engagement before around the issue of scientific integrity. Between listening sessions and our requests for information, more than 1,000 people from across the US and throughout the government have had the opportunity to share their feedback and experiences through the Scientific Integrity Task Force. In this work, disturbing trends have come into view. In the prior administration, scientists were muzzled, blocked from testifying, ordered to suppress information, and barred from telling the truth about the worst impacts of serious threats like COVID-19 and climate change. Transparency took a massive hit, and precisely at a moment when credibility was critical to saving people's lives and livelihoods. In the coming weeks, the Scientific Integrity Task Force will publish a formal, detailed report sharing our findings on what went wrong and proposing a roadmap toward restoring people's trust in government. But even as we pursue those changes, we need to acknowledge that other major force causing people to lose faith. Technology, which for all its extraordinary promise, has also given people reasons to be distrustful. That's why we've also at OSTP been listening to a wide range of stakeholders on the impact of emerging technologies. We've brought to the table people and communities who are rarely in the room, where devices are programmed, algorithms are written, and inputs are made, but who live with the outputs nonetheless. And we've asked those individuals to share their experiences with the White House. We're talking to a wide array of groups, a cohort that represents the diversity of lived experiences in the United States. Yet they have responded with striking consistency. Time and again, we are hearing about people who have fallen victim to discrimination at the hands of the emerging technology. Immigrants who've been automatically sorted out of job applicant pools with no way to seek recourse. People of color and working class folks whose applications to apartment rentals have languished in cyberspace. Story after story of Black men arrested and jailed after being misidentified by predictive policing tools. Injustice can be baked into these technologies by negligence or even by design. We've also launched a separate initiative called The Time Is Now to investigate issues of equity in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. This 5-part series invites researchers, thought leaders, and advocates to the table to diagnose endemic issues and suggest informed solutions to ensure that all people can survive and thrive in these fields. Together, we're identifying barriers facing people in the STEM fields who have disabilities, who are immigrants, people without generational wealth, and others who began the race to a career far behind the starting line. These conversations will be followed by commitments, spurring action across the private, public, and nonprofit fields that shake the foundations of inequality in STEM and open up opportunities across sectors. We have learned a great deal from these candid conversations with scientists, with communities, with advocates. But above all else, these discussions have laid bare a vast architecture of discrimination, an edifice of inequality that has grown steeper and more overwhelming over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. Crisis can confuse or it can clarify. This crisis showed us problems whose depths many had not seen and pointed to where interventions are badly needed. A government in service to the American public will confront these structures head on, and that's exactly what we're doing in the Biden-Harris administration. First, we're taking bold and necessary steps to restore trust in government and in science. The strategy, in short, is to show our work, to be transparent, and to push others to do the same. That means building on important progress achieved during the Obama administration with tools like data.gov, publishing full data sets and making them available to researchers and others, anybody else who wants to use them. Our scientific integrity roundtables and engagement have made it clear that now is the time to inject new urgency into that work and to make sure that the public can always see where the data comes from and draw their own conclusions. That means that sometimes people will agree with the decision that the government has made, and sometimes they will interpret the data differently. That's not something to be fearful of. It's the sign of a healthy democracy. Restoring open government has implications for everything from climate policy to vaccine uptake, existential issues that demand open discussion and vigorous debate. Whether people are challenging policies or rallying around them, they will always have access to the facts. Second, we're taking action to make sure those facts reflect the stories and experiences of all Americans. That starts with collecting data in a way that is fair and equitable. Every day across the Biden-Harris administration, public servants seek to serve communities who have long been an afterthought in policymaking. I hear people at every level ask critical questions about what our decisions mean for different groups, like how one policy might affect Black Americans in urban settings, different from Latino farmers and rural areas. Critical questions that for decades I had only ever really heard asked about in the depths of the academy. Unfortunately, federal data are often not broken down by key demographic variables, including race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and gender identity, disability, income, or veteran status. Our Equitable Data Working Group is seeking to change that. We've convened a cohort of policy experts, statisticians, social scientists, and data scientists and IT leaders across government with one goal: develop a way to measure equity and inequities throughout the federal government. In the coming months, we'll deliver an initial report to Ambassador Susan Rice, the head of the White House Domestic Policy Council, laying out the barriers and gaps to equitable data and offering specific recommendations for how to address them. Finally, we're speeding up the process of making those recommendations, developing real policies to address these real issues in the daily lives of Americans. For too long, the moral challenges of new technology have gone unaddressed. It's time to lay out some rules of the road to articulate a democratic vision for our use of technology. Every free society has guardrails. We can't be singled out for who we are or what we believe. We're protected against unreasonable searches and seizures in our day-to-day life. These protections, even if aspirational, must carry over into our digital lives. Basic rights and responsibilities for artificial intelligence as a safeguard against abuse, bias, and discrimination. Imagine if companies thought about equity at the start of the design process, not only after issues of discrimination emerged downstream. What would it look like? What kind of society could we have if all innovation began with ethical forethought? What kind of society could we have if we considered from the very beginning what might happen if new technology fell into the wrong hands, where the data might travel, how it might be misused in the marketplace to deepen inequality? These are the questions we must ask if we are to build a nation and a world where innovation happens without predation, where protections are baked in from the beginning, where marginalized communities have a voice in the development process, and designers work hard to ensure the benefits of new technologies reach all people. We're turning to the American people to help us get there. Soon we'll be asking folks across the country to tell us about their experiences when it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other emerging technologies, and to provide their insights and ideas to address these problems. These are big changes, necessary changes, made to bring ordinary people into the work of government, close the trust gap that has widened in recent years, and adjust the moral injustices of history. That is what's required of us as we face down the unique and complex challenges of this century and this generation. We're called to build a new critical approach to science, technology, and our social lives. An approach that places human beings at the center, a social science of solutions. We can do all of this. We have it in our power. We have in our power the tools to democratize science. We know how to ensure that when people provide inputs to the algorithm, when we program the device, we are including the people whose voices and values have long been devalued. We can close the vast resource gaps and erase the medical disparities and structural racism that for too long have held us back as a nation and a world. We can restore the integrity of public service and renew our commitment to social and racial justice. As sociologists, each of us has an essential role to play by continuing to generate research that steps into theories, policies, and practices that can contribute to justice and opportunity. I will close today with a story, one that represents where we're headed if we get this work right. It is the story of Soler-Gallart, a remarkable 14-year-old girl with a passion for science, basketball, and spelling. Last month, Soler made history when she correctly spelled the word Maria, becoming the first Black American to win the Scripps National Spelling Bee in the United States, here in the US. After the contest, Soler was interviewed by news outlets from around the world. All of them wanted to know the same thing. What on earth does Soler-Gallart want to be when she grows up? So Soler answered the question the way any teenager would. She said she wanted to be a basketball player at Harvard, then in the WNBA, and a coach in the NBA, and a researcher at NASA, and a scientist curing diseases with gene editing technology. She knew those things wouldn't be easy to achieve, so if all else failed, Soler said she would fall back on her other hobby, neuroscience. I hope when all is said and done, when the tech has been built, the policies have been passed, and the devices have been programmed, that all of it is done with young people like Soler in mind. I hope when we have made progress in our work, that every young person will look upon the world as Soler does and see it not for its limits, but for its abundance, its abundant possibilities. They will not be encumbered by the weight of an unequal past, but buoyed by a boundless future. And when they dream of a life in science and innovation, they will see the well-trodden pathways to get them there. That is the work and the vision of the Biden-Harris administration. A STEM workforce that reflects all of us, from the classroom to the boardroom, to the operating room, to the laboratory. A public that is engaged in the everyday work of government and sees their needs addressed in our decisions. An approach to innovation that is rooted in inclusion, integrity, and our common humanity. We have before us an extraordinary window of opportunity, a chance to take the peril of this moment and turn it into promise and possibility. A chance to write a new social contract, not just for this moment, but for the decades and generations that lie ahead. To employ social research, evidence, and knowledge for better alternative futures. I thank you for the role each of you is playing in this work. I wish you a productive and successful conference, and I thank you for inviting me to be with you here today.
Thank you very much, Alondra, Nelson, for these important and deep reflections on key issues related to the relationship between science, evidence, research, and democracy and justice, and the role that we have sociologists for that. Thank you. So now let me introduce to our second speaker, who will talk about inventing the future. Our next speaker is Dr. Federico Zaragoza. He is the president of the Council of the European Center for Peace and Development of the United Nations. He's the founder and president of the Foundation for Culture of Peace, and he has served as Director General of the UNESCO for 12 years. Dr. Mayor Zaragoza is a renowned scientist, scholar, politician, diplomat, and poet. He has been a professor in different Spanish universities. He was rector of the University of Granada, chair of the European Research Council Expert Group, and co-founder of the Spanish High Council for Scientific Research. He also holds an extensive career as a diplomat and as a politician. He was co-chair of the high-level group for the Alliance of Civilizations and served as the Spanish Minister of Education and Science. He is an honorary member of the several scientific societies and a member of different academies, among them the World Academy of Art and Science. Please join me welcoming Dr. Federico Mayor Zaragoza.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marta. Vull començar molt cordialment a tots els que heu tingut la iniciativa d'aquesta nova edició, perquè parlar avui de coneixement, de democràcia i de futur és absolutament essencial. Per tant, en primer lloc, felicitar a Joan Domènec Ros, president de l'Institut d'Estudis Catalans, a la Teresa Sordé, presidenta del comitè local, a la Marta Soler, presidenta de l'ESE, i a la Gemma, perquè com a ministra d'Universitats és especialment important que sigui ella una de les capdavanteres d'aquesta iniciativa. Therefore, yes, I have been now extremely interested in this opening speak of Alondra Nelson, because really as only the title, the solution. The solution is knowledge and democracy. Because we have now, until now, we have been always with powers only directed by markets, interests, and undemocratic. Because the democracy at the worldwide level is a multilateral system. And always, always, from the origin of time, we have had a male absolute power. Women was completely absent of all the positions in relevant positions in power. And then what has happened? Well, what has happened is that there had been empires that had been always the solution. Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you wish peace, prepare war. And this has been until now, until today, the solution given by most of the governments, some of them called democratic. And always it has been the solution of the reason of the force instead of the force of the reason. And it's for this that I repeat, I consider that the contribution of Alondra has been extremely relevant, because now what we must see is how we can solve, and solve very rapidly. Because for the first time in history, we are facing problems that are potentially irreversible. What I mean is that we have been during many years telling, oh, we must be careful because the oceans, because the Arctic, because the Antarctic, nothing. The governments do not want to be corrected when they have so many market interests in their governance. And we have not been, never listened. And it's for the reason that now, for the first time in history, we are faced with potentially irreversible processes. And this is a very important thing, because we must realize that we have to be conscient, permanently conscient, of the interest of the next generations. How can today we look at the eyes of our children, of our grandchildren, if we do not react and immediately we correct the present trends? Because these present trends, the Arctic will not, the permafrost will not be in the Arctic again. The temperature, the climate change is a reality. It will be also the level of the seas will change dramatically. And all these things have been said during many years. Because now there are some people that say, oh yes, now we must realize, no. From the 47 already, in UNESCO was already created the the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And 10 years later, a very important program, Men and the Biosphere, and the International Geological Program, and the International Geographic Program, and the Oceanographic Commission. The oceans are extremely relevant. The oceans are extremely relevant because they are 2/3 of the skin of the earth. They are very relevant, the oceans. And it is for the reason that was very important that in the year 1979, the Academy of Science of the United States of North America already alerted the world, saying, careful, because there are not only many emissions of CO2, but at the same time, and this is very dangerous, the phytoplankton of the oceans are decreasing, and therefore the reuptake of this CO2 in a photosynthetic process is decreasing. You know what was the reaction? Instead of saying, no, now, are the scientists who are saying this? The reaction was the creation by a company called ExxonMobil of a foundation to pay high amounts to pseudoscientists to say that this was not true. What we have done. We have done because we realize that the interests are always force, the armament, the reason of the force, and the assure that the market processes will go well, and the gross national product. This is what really interests, not the gross national product, the health of the people. No, what really matters is the gross national product. Well, you might realize that already in 1972, an Italian called Aurelio Peccei was already calling the world and saying, be careful. Be careful, because we must control, we must reduce, we must readapt the growth. Limits to growth was that Aurelio Peccei presented to President Kennedy. And in the same time, when Aurelio Peccei was already saying all these things, were people that were saying, no, no, no. Now we must take this decision in a very important summit at the Earth level, saying that now we will be more careful. We will look at the eyes of the next generations, that now we will be more responsible. To be free and responsible is the wonderful definition of education given by the UNESCO's constitution. Free and responsible. We must be free and responsible. And to be free and responsible, therefore, we must know what really happens, what are and how really humanity can face these global threats. And we prepared, I remember very well, because at this moment I had already some responsibilities at this respect, that we organized in Rio de Janeiro, the first Earth Summit, we said, Earth Summit. And we said already that we must now redress some of the present trends. No interest at all. No interest of any kind, and particularly no interest at the level of the United States of North America, that on the contrary, instead of following this alarm, these calls from the scientific society and all the peoples of the world meeting in Rio de Janeiro, they said that all these things are not true, that now we must proceed as always, and the business as always. And 10 years ago, we went to Johannesburg. The United Nations also was promoting in this occasion, saying, well, 10 years ago, we were unprepared, but now, no, now we are prepared, and now we will have immediately here what was called the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium Development Goals will be the solution. United States of North America. Instead of these different things, and the Republican Party that already created in the year 1987, the G6. What is the G6? The G6 is a plutocratic group, important, relevant, rich countries having in their hands the governance of the world. What a disaster. The G6, and then the G7, and then the G8, and then in 2008, the G20. But if we are 196 countries, why we must be directed by 6, 7, or 20? In fact, only by one. The G1, that is always the Republican Party of the United States of North America, that doesn't like at all the democratic multilateralism. They do not like to work with other people. they like to be the first more important country with armament, etc., etc. I think that is really irresponsible. Irresponsible. Every day, we invest at the worldwide level, we invest $4 billion in armament and military expenditures, while thousands of persons, most of them children from 1 to 5 years, die of hunger and extreme poverty. This is the reality. I mean, all the other things, why we must accept that these reduced numbers of countries, G6, G7, G7, G20, why we must accept that they have in their hands the governance of the world? And it is clear that they are not doing very well, because instead of going better, the things were going every day worse. And there was a pause. Yes. In October, November, December of 2015, in the United States of North America, with one democratic president called Barack Obama, was finally possible to accept a multilateral democratic solution. Yes. And the agreement of Paris on climate change was signed. And the resolution of the General Assembly of the United Nations on the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030. That is very nice, because it is said this resolution is to transform the world. Well, then at the end of this year, 2015, we were happy. The scientists, we were happy, because we said, well, now for the first time, we have in North America that is able to say, no, now we must go with all the other countries. We cannot have this hegemony. We must have not this kind of first always and doing what we, and solution of security based on armament. You know, what we need in reality is a new concept of security. A new concept of security. Because now the security have a lot of force to defend the frontiers and the territories. But what about the inhabitants of these territories? What happens with them? What happens with those that are the persons living in these territories? They have a lot of problems with food access, with water access, with health service of quality, with environment care, with good education. This is what really must be the new security, human security. This is what we need. We are very well prepared for a conflict, military conflict. But what about floods? What about fires? What about the migrant problems that we have at the world level? At this moment, is terrible to see all these people that cannot be in their country, even if sometimes they have a lot of very good mineral resources or a lot of production. They have lithium. They have coltan. You know, the Columbi tantalite that is essential for the superconductors that we utilize in the computers and in the mobiles. But no, when these arrive, instead of sharing with the countries that are rich in these products, with sharing with them, the very big powers, the oligopolium powers of this world, take in their hands all the resources, and these people cannot live. I know this very well. I have been looking with these eyes what happened, because people from very, very rich space in the world, they must die of hunger because there is not any kind of capacity for good sharing. There is no democracy. And it is for this that I sincerely think that this word democracy in the speech of Nelson, I think that has been very important, because it's knowledge and democracy. And in the moment in which we will have democracy, the things will change. And this was the idea, by the way. This was the idea already at the beginning of the last century. There was a terrible war. The First World War was terrible, because it was a war in which more than of bombs and armament, people was dying of hunger, of cold, of pests. And at the end of this terrible massacre of so many people, victims of this terrible war, one wonderful president of the United States, democratic one, was Woodrow Wilson. At this moment, there were no planes. He went from New York to Brest, and from Brest, he went to La Place de la Concorde in Paris. And there he showed, now I have the solution. Ladies and gentlemen, now I have the solution. La Convention pour la Paix, the Convention for Peace. And what he did, he created a League of Nations, a Society of Nations, with a court, legal court for solve the problems of at this level of the League of Nations. Was a wonderful first step to solve the problem. But the Republican Party did not accept this proposal. And when Wilson came back to the United States, immediately he was replaced, and was an immense incoherence in history. The country president was proposing the League of Nations, finally never belonged to the League of Nations. It was terrible. And then we had a Society of Nations, a League of Nations that was very weak. And what happened now is for this that we must, to have a new future, we must know very well what has happened. And what happened was that in Europe, with this League of Nations, because the United States was not there, Hitler was able to say very clear in 1933, he already wrote Mein Kampf. And he said that the Aryan race is incompatible with the Jewish one. And immediately Benito Mussolini said the same, saying, not the Aryans, they are not important. This supremacism of Aryans, no, the supremacism must be of the Romans. The Romans are much more important than the Aryans. And very, very far in the East, Hirohito, the emperor of the Japan, was also persuaded, convinced by Tanaka of the same. We are much important, much better. Our race is much superior than the others in the Eastern countries. And you know what was the result? It was a terrible war. with thousands and millions of victims, a terrible war. And when this war ended, then another Democrat, wonderful president of the United States of North America created a multilateral democratic system with different agencies for health, for education, communication, and science, for work, for the children, for the development, the UNICEF, the UNDP, etc., etc. Apparently all was solved, but immediately what really was this terrible end of this excellent initiative in 1945, followed, do not forget it, by the Declaration on Human Rights in 1948. But what happened? That all was under the immense career, immense race of the superpowers, military race of the superpowers. And during many years, many decades, the world was under this only superpower, the USSR and United States of North America. In the year 1986, at this moment I was quite close of these events, unexpected president of USSR called Mikhail Gorbachev. Immediately he said that the USSR, the Soviet Union, will be transformed in a Commonwealth of independent states. And in October 1986, in Reykjavik, he suggested to President Reagan that now tomorrow we must tell the world a good news, that nuclear weapons are going to be completely eliminated. Because this is one of the global threats that are inadmissible in this future, why we must be always with this threat, permanent threat for humanity. Well, and you remember, yes, was a reduction of the weaponry to the 70%, but the 30% must be respected because, you know, the United States needs to have this 30% because, well, they must have this leadership and this hegemonic power. And Mr. Reagan was very clear. He said no to the elimination and he accepted this reduction. But well, he created immediately the G6. And then other Republican presidents, Bush father, Bush son, also went in the same rate. And as I was saying you before, was after all this, after the two summits of the earth, was a moment in which we say, yes, at the end of 2015, yes, now we can in the United States. And he has signed the agreements of Paris for climate change and the resolution of the United Nations to transform the world. It was a good moment, it was a very, very good moment. However, only 6 months later on, there was a president again of the Republican Party, and even more, a very difficult to describe personality. And Donald Trump immediately said, I will not put into practice the agreements of Paris on climate change. I will not put into practice the Agenda 2030. All the hope of the scientific community, of all those that have been working, that we have been working, because we said now we are facing global threats, but global irreversible, some of them. And I know very well what is irreversibility, because from the year 1966, I have been working with irreversible damage of the brain of the children. And we created many years ago the diagnosis immediately after birth, because if we have a good diagnosis and we have a good treatment, these children are completely normal. But if not, they are forever. There is no solution afterwards, because the neuronal capacity has completely deteriorated. Well, then at this moment, when Donald Trump says, no, I will not apply, we were expecting a reaction of the world, because we are 196 countries. And we must expect that there is the European Union now is the moment to say, well, no, we are very sorry, but the European Union will apply the agreements of Paris and will apply the resolution for a democratic multilateral system. And this does not happen. This does not happen because there are many structural problems, but because there is another concept of security. We have always here in mind that the security is to have more NATO forces and more military expenditure. Well, the result has been that after some years, 6 years of delay, now with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, with persons in the White House, as we have at present with Nelson, with our friend Nelson. Now we can change the things, because they can agree that the governance of the world be based on knowledge, scientific knowledge, expertise knowledge, people that knows very how we see, and democracy. Democratic multilateralism. It's for this that I have said at the beginning, being really with is the key words for the solution. Democracy, and now we must say very clearly, because our intergenerational responsibility is now very important to be permanently taken into account. Otherwise, we cannot think, you know, when I was young, at the end of one book of Albert Camus, there was a phrase that was terrible, that said, je les méprise, I reject them because they were able, but they were unable to have the capacity of work, to have the capacity of dare. They could, but they didn't dare. And therefore, I think that now we must say, the world, that now for the first time, with this new possibility of multilateralism and assistance of the academic, intellectual, scientific, artistic community, all those that can create. Every human being is able to create. This is our hope. Every human being is able to think, to reflect, to imagine, to invent. Every human being is able to invent his or her own future. And this is what now we must do. At the worldwide level, a pact of unity, because the irreversible processes are global and needs to have this global reaction. And at the same time, we must be able to look at the eyes of the next generations and to say to them, we will dare. We will be able to change the present trends. We will be able to reinforce a multilateral system. We will be able for the first time to be to human beings equal in dignity, whatever are their gender, their sensibility, sexual sensibility, ideology, their beliefs, all the human beings all together to face the global threats. And this is why I have been, during these days of pandemics, working very hard, saying, yes, now the human beings are able to express themselves. Until some decades, we were unable to say what we were thinking. But now with the mobiles, we can express ourselves. For the first time, humanity has voice. Now we can participate. If I participate, I exist. Therefore, now we must encourage we the peoples, as it is said in the wonderful charter created by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We the peoples, we have resolved to save the succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Now we say, we the peoples, we have now, yes, because now we can express ourselves, we have decided to save the succeeding generations from the deteriorated habitability of the earth. We are going to put into practice the Agenda 2030. We are going to put into practice the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Federico, for bringing the relevance of global awareness and the importance of the Agenda 2030 for democracy and for the next generation, and for this positive ending that we can do that, we are going to bring this agenda for the next generation. Thank you. This is the end of this keynotes and this in this opening of the ESA conference. And in order to close that, you have seen that we have prepared in the program a small performance. So don't move from this connection that you are now. We just give us 2 minutes that those who are here in this room, we are moving to the patio of the Institute of Catalan Studies, where we will see a small performance with some scholars who are also musicians and artists. Don't stay with us, and we just move and we connect with you now in 1 minute, but just be in the same connection. Don't move. Thank you, and enjoy also the end of this opening, and enjoy the rest of the conference. We'll see you in the continuing days. Thank you.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce the performance on Mariana Pineda. I am Fernando Macías, member of the technical team of the Integrated Plan for the Roma People at the Catalan government, also an associate professor at the University of Barcelona, and Roma researcher at the Roma Studies Group at the CREA University of Barcelona. We will have the honor to approaching the play by Jordi Vivancos, professor of sociology of music at the Higher School of Music of Catalonia, SMUC, and director of the International Music Contest Maria Canals. He is coordinator of the Clave project of the Palau de la Música Catalana, with 1,800 children and 80 choirs. He studied sociology at the University of Barcelona, and he dedicated part of his work to breaking down stereotypes about classical music and cultural elitism. Jordi Vivancos will be accompanied by Anne López de Aguileta. She is researcher and teaching assistant in sociology at the University of Barcelona. She has studied professional clarinet at Arriaga Conservatory in Bilbao and at Zaragoza Conservatory. She holds an MA from the University of Zaragoza with a thesis on the transformation of working class adults' lives through classical music gatherings. Introducing the play, we have to say that Mariana Pineda is a theater play by the Spanish poet and playwright Federico García Lorca. It is a combination of historical reality and artistic creation on the life of Mariana Pineda, a relevant feminist in the resistance to the absolutist government of Ferdinand VII in the 19th century in Spain. The war against Napoleon ended with the return of the King Ferdinand VII, which led to absolutist reaction against the 1812 Constitution. The liberals will not give up in their efforts to proclaim the Constitution. Mariana, committed to the liberal cause, have a flag embroidered with the words equality, freedom, law. An action that placed her in the crosshairs of Ramon Pedrosa, who was known as the mayor of crime, because he had full powers from King Ferdinand VII. Pedrosa offered to Mariana freedom in exchange for betraying those fighting with Mariana. After she refused, she was sentenced to death and executed. The play was written between 1923 and 1925 and was first performed in 1927. Federico García Lorca was a Spanish poet and playwright, and he was a relevant member of a group of artists and scientists who made international key contributions, as Dalí, Ramón y Cajal, Machado, Ortega y Gasset, and Picasso. He was killed by Franco's military force at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. García Lorca introduced the first scene of the Mariana Pineda play, describing the desolation that is felt in the city.
Oh, sad day in Granada, to make the stones weep. Seeing Marianita dying on the scaffold because she refuses to betray. Marianita, seated in her room, did not stop to consider, what if Pedrosa saw me embroidering the flag of liberty? Oh, sad day in Granada. The bells ring and ring.
García Lorca explains the ways in which Mariana Pineda is faithful to her revolutionary ideas.
She is embroidering and embroidering. I have seen her through the keyhole. The red thread between her fingers resembles a knife wound in the air. Her smile has become almost pale, like an open flower on a piece of lace. She should abandon those intrigues. What should she care of outside things? If she embroiders, let her embroider dresses for her child when she is grown. If the king is not a good king, let it be. Women should not be bothered with that.
Pedrosa, the representative of the king, the mayor of crime, offered Mariana freedom in exchange of betraying her revolutionary friends, thus sexual relations with him. The feminist revolution in Mariana will not subdue.
Mariana, and the flag? The one you embroidered with those white hands, against the laws of the king. Very well embroidered, of purple taffeta and green letters. There in the Albaicin we found it, and it is now in my power, like your life. But do not be afraid, I am your friend. I want you mine. Do you hear? Mine or dead? You have always scorned me, but now I am able to encircle your throat with my hands. This throat of transparent spikenard, and you will love me because I gave you your life. By force, you will inform. The irons are very painful. And a woman is always a woman.
Inside the prison, the other women speak with admiration about Mariana Pineda.
I don't understand. She is a good woman, and they want to kill her. What do you say? I wish I could look closely at her heart for a long while. What a brave woman. Yesterday, when they came to read her death sentence, she did not hide her smile. Oh, Marianita Pineda, the flowers that will accompany you in death are opening.
Mariana is desesperated, realizing about the course of her life.
What right do the police have? In that flag of liberty, I embroidered the greatest love of my life. Am I to remain here imprisoned? Oh, to have clear crystal wings to fly in search of you.
García Lorca finished the play evoking the tragedy.
Oh, sad day in Granada, to make the stones weep, seeing Marianita dying on the scaffold for want of betrayal.